Hi. Um, I've been ever since I did a video on Saw X or Saw 10. I've been wanting to just make a video about the Saw series in general. So here it is, and um, just very randomly on the spur of the moment. And this is basically just going to be my history with Saw. No in-depth analysis or nothing. But the first Saw movie, I did not see in the theater. I saw it on DVD a year later. On Halloween morning, actually, I had rented uh, Saw and the remake of Dawn of the Dead, and so I watched them both Halloween morning, and I watched Dawn of the Dead first, then I watched Saw, which was the correct order in which to watch them, fortunately, because I wound up not liking Dawn of the Dead. Now, I had not seen the original Dawn of the Dead at that time, so I had no expectations going in, other than, well, it's a zombie movie. Um, but I didn't like it. A few months later, I did finally see the original, which I wound up loving, and I still love the original Dawn of the Dead. Um, but I did not like the remake, and but then I saw, and I loved it. It was a great way to end the morning with that. Not only a good overall film, but that reveal, where you know Jigsaw stands up at the end, and Adam is shocked, and hopefully the audience is shocked as well. I certainly was. I had the reaction that the filmmaker was going for, um, and yeah. So since I enjoyed that very much, I went ahead and watched Saw 2 in the theater, which was, of course, in the theater at the time. And while it was, different, I thought it was still quite good. It had a different pacing, different tone. It had different, it was all those people in the house, right? This was early in the franchise, so it was still establishing things. There were still surprises, um, and uh, and I enjoyed it. And I especially enjoyed the ending where it's revealed that Amanda is going to be um, the um, the the next in line. She's going to take over for John Kramer, and I was very excited about that, especially because I thought that John Kramer was actually dead at the end of the film. The last scene, the last time we see him in the film in the van, he looked dead to me. So I thought he was dead. So I thought now it's Amanda being Jigsaw. Um, and I thought it was great that she was taking over. I thought it was great that Jigsaw was an idea, not a specific character, so that it could just be passed on. Um, from one person to the next. And I loved Amanda. I thought she was a wonderful character, um, played by the wonderful Shawnee Smith. So I was very excited about the future of this franchise. And then Saw 3 came out, and everybody died. So I was like, okay, I guess, so much for carrying on the legacy. Yeah, I guess that's it. I guess it's a trilogy. It was a good trilogy. I mean, and Saw 3 was a really good movie. Even though my personal history with it is a little bit embarrassing because I saw it on Halloween. Um, the tagline, if it's Saw, if it's Halloween, it must be Saw, hadn't happened yet. That didn't. I think that came out around Saw 5, maybe. Um, but that feeling was kind of in the air, and so I was like, it's Halloween. I should go see a movie. I should go see Saw 3. But the problem was that as much as I love Halloween, as excited as I get in August, September, October, on the day itself, I usually wind up being depressed and not able to enjoy it. So that's what happened this day. I went to the theater, and got a ticket for Saw 3, and I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't enjoying it, and I actually walked out. It's the only movie I've actually ever walked out on. Um, and I wound up loving it, but I wasn't feeling it that day. And it was at the point where the judge is being drowned in ground up pig. That's when I walked out. Right. And then when they announced Saw 4, I was like, what are they gonna do? Everyone's dead. Uh, so I didn't bother to see it in the theater, but I did rent it. I was curious, so I rented, and I was surprised to find that it was actually quite good. And I was like, oh, this is the flip side. This is the story that's going on during the story. This is, we didn't have the police investigation in Saw 3. Usually in the Saw movies, you have like 3 different things going on at the same time. You have the main game, you have backstory, and you have the police investigation. But Saw 3 had a couple of games going on, a little some backstory, but yeah, but didn't have the police investigation. So that's they worked on that with Saw 4. And so I really liked that. I really enjoyed that, and at the end of that, I was like, okay, that's the end. That's the end of the story. But then Saw 5 happens, right? And of course, at that point, you're shifting from the main character, John Kramer, and Amanda to Hoffman, of course, being the main villain. And originally it was supposed to be, the studio was like, okay, let's do 8 movies, 4 and 4. And because the first 4 really are their own story. And then, up till the death of John Kramer, really. And then 5 through 8 would be after that. And, it would have a little bit more of a soap opera feel to it. So Saw 5 started that, and Saw 5 was a mixed bag to me. I liked the main game, the main, the people going from room to room. But with the police investigation side, with Strahm in there, I didn't like that. To me, it was for one thing, it added too much backstory. It meant that the origin story in Saw 1 wasn't actually the origin story, as far as the first trap goes. And also the way Strahm just goes to these crime scenes, which have been like totally unchanged since the crime, and just stands there and intuits everything that happened. Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's bullshit. When you have a character just intuiting stuff, no, that doesn't really work. So I had a problem with that aspect of the film, but the rest of it I liked. Of course, the hunter leading the hunted, or the hunted leading the hunter thing, and leading to the climax was pretty good. 6 I thought was a step up. I really enjoyed that. It was in a way, it was kind of the first time that it became really thematic. I mean, the 5th movie did involve the whole housing thing with all these different characters that played a part in destroying something that was already there to build something new, to sell stuff. But 6 really just targeted the insurance companies, and I thought it was pretty well done. And everything that went along with it. Now at this point, the backstories is really starting to pile up, with Jill having the miscarriage, and even for a dedicated fan, it can get confusing as to when John decided to start doing this, how his motivations developed, and because in Saw 2 you have him saying, it wasn't the cancer that got me started on my work, it was when I attempted suicide, right? And survived, and I decided to test the fabric of man, and to test the resilience of people's will to live and the body's ability to take damage. But then 6, you have the his wife's miscarriage, and his wife's dealing with druggies and those things going into his life view and his motivation for doing what he does. And I guess the first trap being the one where the guy is sitting in the chair and has to with his hands and feet bound, and he has to press his face into the knives, and then the thing collapses and he winds up tossing himself into the razor wire. I guess that technically was the first trap, but there's a whole lot we still don't know exactly how these things progressed. But overall, I liked it. That was a good movie. With Saw 3D, Saw 7. I saw it opening night. I saw it in the theater, and it was a packed house, and everyone was having a blast. I had a blast. It is a kind of a go-to. I mean, all the Saw movies are kind of feel-good movies for me. If you're a Saw fan, you understand. But Saw 7 is like an especially feel good, or almost a guilty pleasure if I felt guilty about it, right? And like I said, these things it was originally supposed to go to 8, but after 6 didn't perform as well as the studio wanted, they decided, no, we're not going to do 8, we're just going to do one more. We're just going to cut our expenses and do one more movie. But we're going to do it in a more expensive format. Genius. I don't understand that reasoning. I mean, it was at a time when 3D was having a boom again, when it was becoming a thing, because of Avatar. Avatar was, amazingly successful, had amazing legs at the box office. Which I don't understand, because it's not a good movie, but it was extremely successful. It was in 3D, and so the lemmings that are Hollywood producers were like, we got to make 3D. So they decided to make the last movie in 3D, which I hate 3D. 3D is nothing but a gimmick. If a movie is good, if it's well done, it's going to draw the audience in, and you don't need a gimmick. And the gimmick's not going to help. In fact, it'll actually hinder. It'll actually pull people out of the movie, because they're like, hey, there's a gimmick. And it looks really weird when you're actually, because there are specific shots that are designed for the 3D effect, which look wrong when you're not watching it in 3D. Right? But nonetheless, it was enjoyable. The one of the scenes that was specifically designed for 3D was, of course, the dream sequence, where Jill Tuck gets cut up really fast, or that thing goes into her, and her body goes all over the place, and some guts fly out of the screen. It was cool, but the movie it was another movie that had a kind of a theme. You had the theme of kind of sins of the tongue. Of course, you had the main game was because of the dude who lied about actually being in a Jigsaw game. But then you also have the guys who are racist, and that can also be kind of listed under things of the tongue. So, speaking hatred, and unreasonable bias, and spreading that. So it was another kind of thematic one, but it was also another film that was piling on backstory. You had the guy who fakes, lies and writes the book about it. you see him before he does that, when he's getting the idea. He's at the bar, he's watching the TV, and you have this woman talking about how she's so glad that she went through this trap, and she wishes that on everyone else. And when did that happen? When in the timeline did that happen? And then later on, and then you have the Jigsaw survivors meeting, where you have the lady telling the story of, I guess, her abusive spouse and her hanging above a bunch of lawnmowers. Again, when did this happen? And the very first trap of the film, the love triangle trap, was a great trap, okay? But it's completely disconnected from everything else. You have no idea when this is supposed to take place. Now, if you listen to the, I think it's the writer's commentary, the two guys who survived that trap are supposed to be the two guys in Pig Masks, of course, who take down Hoffman at the end of the film. Who are the kind of the muscle for Dr. Gordon. But, that's not in the film. You wouldn't know that without listening to the commentary. So this is just some random trap. So there's all this random stuff going on. And then, of course, you have John Kramer actually showing up at the book signing. Now, John Kramer was on a was on a strict timeline here. He was dying. And somehow there were enough Jigsaw traps that had happened, enough stuff in the news, enough people coming forward about it, that the guy got the idea about lying about being one himself, had the time to write a book about it, get the book published, and then somehow Jigsaw is still well enough to show up at the book signing for that book. And it's like, how does all this stuff work in the timeline? I mean, I remember thinking to myself, and sometimes when we're watching these movies, I'm thinking about what if someone tried to create a chronological supercut, like an edit, which puts every single scene in its proper place chronologically. Would that even be possible? Probably not. I mean, you'd have to take some guesses on some of this stuff, but it gets kind of convoluted. But as convoluted as it gets, I still love it. Some movies you see the problems and you simply call it a bad movie, and certainly Saw haters will do that. But I'm a Saw lover. I acknowledge its problems, but I still like it. Now with Saw 8 Jigsaw, I only saw Jigsaw once. I did not see it in the theater. Saw it on, I don't know whether it was on DVD or on streaming or what, but I honestly don't remember much about it. It didn't make much of an impression on me. I didn't care for it much. It was a game that was in the past. Another game that was in the past where one of the players got short shrift, right in the beginning. And so Jigsaw, John Kramer took care of him, and then he kind of became an apprentice to Jigsaw or something. And then he does a game later on, which includes a woman who had killed her baby and then blamed it on her husband, I think. Which was the thing that stood out to me, because I thought that was actually pretty interesting. That because I'm sure that's been a temptation of a lot of women, where the baby is just crying constantly and just driving them nuts, depriving them of sleep, being constantly noisy, and just I'm sure that's a motivation that a lot of people can connect with. And even if you haven't gone through it, you can be like, yeah, I can see that someone would do that. And then you have the game that relates to that down the line. So that's all I remember about the film. Like I said, didn't make much of an impression. Spiral was it was very meh for me. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. it didn't really feel. I mean, there's a reason why it's called Spiral and not Saw 9, because it is a side story, and it's so much a side story that it doesn't even really feel like it takes place in the Saw universe. It really feels like it takes place in the real world where the Saw movies exist. And and I think for a few minutes there, that's what I was actually expecting it to be. But it was a nice try, I guess. But to me, it didn't really all come together. Um, what was the funniest thing about it was I saw a critic a criticism of it online. I don't remember whether it was on Twitter or on Rotten Tomatoes, but someone complained that this movie is so critical of police, and they're not even subtle about it. And I'm just like, dude, you've never seen another Saw movie, have you? Subtlety is not what it does. This series is not known for subtlety. And abuse of police power has been in it. The theme of abuse of police power has been in it pretty much throughout the whole thing. So Spiral is more on the nose about it, but but it's always been there to some degree. So yeah, that was kind of funny that a person would complain about it. It's just. And then Saw X, I already did a video about that. I thought it was worthy. It had its issues. It's interesting that it was not only does the plotting split right in two, you have the scam and then you have the game, but it's also the most streamlined of the movies because, like I mentioned earlier, the movies generally have three things going on at once: the game, the backstory, and the police thing. This movie only has one thing going on. It's just a very straightforward narrative. So it has a different feel in that way. It has a different pacing in that way. So that was interesting, but overall it was still pretty good. And yeah, so it's starting to get dark here. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit dark. Anything else I want to add before I end this thing? These movies have been unfairly called torture porn by people who don't like them. That's not. It's a term that's better applied to the Hostel series, which I tried watching the first Hostel. I couldn't even watch the whole thing because I just didn't like the characters. It was interesting to me. But Saw has always been very strong thematically, and that's the main reason I think it's been thematically, character-wise, and those are the things that really carry movie series along. Is the story, the characters, and the themes. It's some people think, especially producers or movie critics, might think it's all about the traps and the gore. It's not all about that. I mean, those are nice, they're perks, but they're not the main thing. The reason why the traps exist in the first place is why the series is so strong. They're not just random things. It's just not a random torture. And I've long considered these films to be kind of the most religious movies that have nothing to do with religion. They're kind of morality plays, but they don't actually mention morality per se, which is good. I think that makes them more universal and just more resonant. To make it more just strictly of a basic human experience rather than some specific religious ideas. Anyway, I guess I'll stop the video now. Anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.